Absolutely. All right. So I get the pleasure of talking to you about plugins and widgets and sort of a quick recap of how we brought our open platform to FigJam just a few weeks ago. Quick sort of recap. The reason we did this is because we believe an open platform enables anyone in the Figma community to really build the tools that they need for their teams to be successful and to collaborate together. What that looked like was bringing over plugins and also widgets, which we'll sort of dive into a bit more later. And a quick recap on plugins. Plugins are great for automating your work and individual workflows. So they make individual workflows more efficient. They make things like customizing styles, organizing stickies, importing data, a lot easier, even allow functionality such as like spell check, find and replace, that kind of thing. And the great thing about plugins is that they work across both Figma and FigJam. And so if you have existing plugins in Figma that were sort of ported over to FigJam, you don't need to have two separate plugins. It's just one that works across both. And then widgets are sort of a newer thing that we're introducing. That's what we're going to talk more about today. And widgets are great for boosting collaboration across teams and folks in a FigJam file. And so quick recap, widgets are interactive native-like objects that entire teams can use together. And they live on the canvas, which means that they are inherently collaborative. Everyone can see and interact with them at the same time. And so they're great for things like voting and polls and games and really help make sort of facilitation a breeze. So that's enough about sort of high-level overview, but now we're going to jump into some sort of demos, and we're going to hear from some of the developers who have been building widgets in terms of what they've been learning as they were sort of going through this process. And so first off, we want to pass it off to Gavin, who's going to talk to us a little bit about the table widget that he built. So take it away, Gavin.
Hi there. So I just share my screen. There we go. Nice to meet everyone. My name's Gavin. I'm a freelance designer, and I started building Figma plugins around about this time last year, and I was fortunate enough to be part of the widget beta. So I want to show you a little bit about the widget that I created and some of the things that I learned. So when I created my first plugin, Table Creator, I had an idea where I wanted to be able to allow designers to easily insert rows and columns. And I really wish there was a way that I could do this. And when I heard about widgets and being able to add on-click events to certain nodes, I was really excited about the possibilities. So after working with the widget API, for a couple of weeks, I managed to create a widget which allows you to insert tabular data into your FigJam file. So you can click any cells, add text. You can use a keyboard shortcut to navigate to different cells. And oops, there you go. I always misspell vegetable. Keyboard. And some of the other things you can do are kind of insert new columns. So you can insert a column to the right. You can also import data using Google Sheets or a CSV file. And I was really fascinated by what I was able to accomplish in a short amount of time. So I thought it would be really useful just to go over some of the things that I learned from doing this that might help you if you want to create your own widgets. So the first thing is that the syntax is pretty easy to pick up, but if you're not familiar with React or JSX style syntax, you might find it a little bit difficult to include logic in your templates, and I can show you a way that I learned that made it easier for me. The other thing is when you're designing your widget, because widgets are very visual things, you want to be able to kind of like convert what it is that you've designed into code. And that was something that I kind of wanted to make a little bit easier. So I want to show you some things on that. And then the last thing is when you store state in a widget, there's kind of two ways to do this. And I kind of learned the hard and fast way of what I should be doing with my widget. So I've got some examples on how I got around that. So when you create a widget and you're working with React style kind of syntax, you might find it at first a little bit difficult to, or at least for me, how to include logic. So what I learned was that you can actually use a map function, and you can include if statements and add logic that way. So here what we're doing is when the first row comes up, it actually uses a header cell component, and then for the rest of the cells it uses a normal cell. So this is quite an easy way to be able to do that if you don't want to have to create another component. So the next thing which I was really fascinated by was how I could kind of speed up the process of turning my design in Figma into widget code. And what I did was I actually created a kind of an extension to another plugin which I've already created called Node Decoder. So if you select anything that you've designed in Figma and you run Node Decoder, it will convert those layers into widget code. So here it's got all the attributes, it's got the corner radius, the shadows, effects, and things like that, and you can copy that and use it in your widget code. And one of the things that was really useful in doing that as a process was that I noticed some of the little differences between the API. So the first is that fills, you can only include one fill currently in the API, so you can't do multiple fills. The second is that there's a few kind of keywords that you might not spot straight away. So if you want to make an element stretch, you can use fill parent on the width. And if you want to set the spacing between elements, you can use the keyword auto on spacing. So the biggest thing for me was that I was originally using synced state, when really for the type of widget that I've got, because multiple people can edit different cells at the same time, I wanted to be using synced map. And actually I have to make a little shout out to Isaac Goldberg from the Figma team. He's a software engineer, and he helped me kind of crack this one. So here's a quick example. It's a bit of an abstract example, but if you use sync state, it's sort of like setting a whole object, whereas using synced map is like setting individual entries on an object. And so this is really useful for data sets. So the way to think about it for me was to think about the cells as individual data sets that sit on a grid, and not all of the cells will be rendered. Some of them there's no values for. But the difficulty comes in actually rendering that in a widget. And so when you're using auto layout, you still have to put that into an array. So here's a quick example of how I sorted the entries from the synced map into arrays. And here I'm sorting the order so that the columns and the rows are in the correct order. The second thing is that you want it so that when someone creates a new column or a new row, that the data is unique, and another user isn't going to sort of like create a column that's going to overwrite that. So you want to be able to create unique IDs, and one way of doing this is to use the current user session ID, and then having an increment so that the number is different each time they create a new column. And then the kind of last interesting challenge I had was when the user inserts a table widget, I wanted it to have a default number of rows and columns. And one of the differences with synced state and synced map is that it's not possible to set a default value for a synced map. But a really interesting way to get around this is to use use effect and set a state so that you can tell when the widget has the difference between it first being inserted and after that. So here we've actually set some default values for those table columns and those rows. And that means that the user can, when they insert the table, actually start with these 4 cells here. And hopefully that information's been valuable, and it can inspire you to create some awesome widgets. So thanks very much.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Gavin. All right, and next up, we have Tru, who's going to talk to us about her soundboard widget. So take it away, Tru.
Hi, everyone. Let me share my screen real quick. Click share. I almost clicked leave button. Okay, share. Awesome. Hope everyone can see the screen. I'll present this in a sec. I just want to go through because we're going to do a demo as well. But yeah, so hi, I'm Tru. I'm a software engineer at Square. On the side, I stream programming on Twitch, and I build Figma widgets. These are 2 links in case you're interested. But yeah, really quick, the one that we're showing today is called Soundboard. I got really motivated. I was in the Figma widget beta early as well, and it was really fun to see so many people building really cool widgets. I was really inspired, and I wanted to do something a little different. So I was like, let's play with sound. A long time ago, I went to a hackathon and I built a soundboard out there as well. So I thought it'd be really cool to kind of bring that back. So yeah, this is Soundboard. It's just an easy way for you to play sounds in your FigJam file. So really quick, I'll do a demo before we get in. So here, let's open up this. Awesome. So let me play the sounds to you first. So basically how the widget works is it's a button. So you can click on this. So you can hear the little Discord blip. You can hear this. This is loud. So I'm just going to close because it's a long sound. So yeah, how it works is if you don't have a sound on, you click on the button and then it pops up this modal. And so in here, you can give it a name. So for this one, it's just like a sad trombone. So I'll do this. I have a link here for the link to the sound. So this is an MP3. And then here is just like an image. So this is an image hosted on Giphy. So I can save this. And so now if we click on this button, so it just plays a sound to, and specifically to the person that is clicking the button. So that's how this widget works. Sweet. So let's go back and then let me present. So really quick, I want to just talk through how widgets work because mine kind of my explanation kind of relies on this understanding between the widget and this iframe, that modal that you saw that popped up. So I just want to talk through really quick. So yeah, so Figma runs with these 2 different contexts. There's the widget side of the code, which kind of handles like the stuff that you see on the screen, right? So that's where you write sort of that JSX syntax, React-like components to display your widget on the screen to the users, right? So then there's also this, the other side, which is like the iframe context. And that allows you to do things that the widget one doesn't. For example, if I wanted to fetch some data from a URL, I could use this iframe context, that window to do that. Also do things with DOM. So I needed that specifically because I want to play audio. So that's why I need to have this sort of interaction between the widget and the iframe. So how they interact is they have this post message. So they send messages back and forth. So for example, when in my iframe, when I set the sound URL and the image, it sends that back to the widget so that the widget knows what to display and then what to play when clicked on. So that's kind of how these 2 interact with each other. Sweet. So really quickly, I'll just talk through the soundboard widget code. It's basically like very React-like components. So these are also very native to Figma. So the really cool thing is when you copy and paste a widget, for example, it's really easy for Figma to understand because they're all components that they understand. So here we have these auto layouts, and then inside of the auto layout, you have either an image or text. And so this just changes based on if someone has inserted an image URL to display, if they don't, then it just shows the sound name that you put. It has on clicks that handle the actual playing of sounds. And I'll talk through a little bit about what this function OpenUI does. So there's that. And then, yeah, so this is basically saying if you have a sound, show something. And then if you don't, it would just show that add sound visual. So that's this. Cool. And so now let's go. There's one more thing that I have where if you click on the widget itself, you can edit. So there's this property menu. So I just wanted to go through really quick. So this is kind of how that works. And then in the case of an edit, we just call OpenUI, which is the function that I built, which I'll go through and then just pass an edit. So yeah, that's how you can edit a sound after it's already been set. Sweet. So really quickly, OpenUI was this function that I built that basically kind of takes in an intent, and this intent is of type new, edit, or play. And so this just made it really easy for me. Instead of like rewriting the same code, I could just call this function with different parameters. And then a really cool thing here is like, we do need to, in this OpenUI function, we need to return a promise. Promises are how Figma knows when to stop executing the JavaScript. So on the bottom, you can see like UI.once, when it receives a message, it'll resolve. And so that'll say like, yes, we finished playing the sound, or this has been completed, we will stop showing this. And then also you can see inside here, it calls the show UI function, which is the Figma way of opening up that iframe. And it'll pass in the options you pass in. And then we also post the message, which is basically of type open message on the side here, which is the intent and then the sound object. And I think I have an image of what the sound object is. But yes, this is how, this is when I said like widgets talk to the iframe. So this is with the widget sending to the iframe that, hey, this is the data. So cool. Oh, I went backwards, my bad. Okay, cool. So now here, this is more of the widget code. We use sync state here because it's very simple. There's a sound that you're setting. That's the state of the widget. So I just have use sync state with the type sound. Sound has the URL, the name, and the image URL. Probably named poorly, but it's okay. Probably should have said like audio URL. It's okay. So, and then inside that, there's also a use effect, and this use effect just has an on message that listens for incoming messages. That's like, hey, if this is message add sound, then we set the state of the widget to that sound that we received. Or if there's type close, just close the plugin. That's kind of how close the iframe, like close the running plugins. Sweet. So there's that. Sweet. So now let's talk about the iframe code really quick. So we're going to jump to that side. I used React to write this, so it's very React-like. Basically, the first thing I do is grab the data from the widget. I'll talk through this custom hook that I built called use data from widget. But yeah, so basically I grab the data immediately. In a use effect, if I don't see anything, I'll just return. If I don't see any data, I'll return. But if I do have data and the data has a sound and the intent is play, then I create this new audio object. And then I set the source to the sound, the URL that I received from data, and then I play. So this is basically the very basics of how I play audio. There's a couple of things in here that there's like event listeners on the audio object to be like, oh, the audio has finished playing. And then once that happens, it sends the thing back to the widget to close. But I just didn't copy that code because I thought it was very, but this is just the very, this is the basics of the audio playing code. Sweet. So this is the coolest part, I think, of what I wrote in this code. Basically, it's a custom hook that is grab some data from the widget. So it sets like a state for the data, and then we use this layout effect to immediately post like add an event listener to the page. And so as soon as it sees that there's a message being sent, it'll grab that and it'll set that data and then return that data for you. So that's why in the React code, the first thing I do is just grab the data. So then I know that whether or not there is a sound that exists, and I can do different things based on that. So that's this part. I used a layout effect because it attaches the event listener faster than a use effect would. And I just found that through just testing. So that's how I figured that out. Awesome. And so the really cool thing about this is the code is open source. A lot of people were interested. Someone, I think for Maker Week, was building a widget using audio, and they told me that they looked through the code, and I thought that was really awesome. It wasn't great. I cleaned it up since then. So if you're interested, it's just at github.com, and then that's the /Tru Narla /Figma-soundboard. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I do have one little thing that I was working on, so I could show that as well. So yeah, these are my links again. And the widget that I was working on, it's not done, so it's a little poor. Really, it doesn't look great either. But I was also working on a piano widget. I thought it'd be really fun to mess more with audio. So this is the piano widget. You can click on the keys. The notes are wrong because I don't actually know what the notes are supposed to be, so I gotta figure that out. But this plays. The really cool thing too is I can click play up here, and then if you're focused on this window, you can use your keyboard to play the sounds. So it's just a small thing that I was working on. But yeah, that's me. Hopefully that was good. Let me go back. I think I just stopped. Awesome.
Not only was that good, it was great. Thank you so much, Tru. I love that you brought sound to FigJam. Are you using this on your streams?
Oh my gosh, I should. I actually have to figure out what sounds I want to play and then set it up, but it would be really cool. So I will set that up. Yeah.
The setup is the hardest work.
Mhm.
Awesome. Great job. Okay, so we're moving on. Next up is Brett Holcomb. Brett, if you'd introduce yourself and then let's get right into your widget. Can't wait to see more.
Sounds good. That's a hard act to follow. True's code's so pretty. Mine's going to be a little more rough, but that's fine. I am Brett. I'm a design technologist at Intuit. I've been there like, I guess 7 years now. I started coding about 5 years ago. I started as an interaction designer, actually, so I guess I'm also a diviner. I'm just going to do a little bit. Let me share my screen. So I'm gonna do a little bit of history first, just because like the team couple years ago, we built our first plugin at Intuit for Figma, and we built a game called Dixma. And so basically the way the game works, it's basically Dixit, but for Figma. And we tracked sort of the game state and progressing the game in the plugin. But then the players didn't actually need the plugin. They could basically enter their names here, and then all of their game actions would take place on their artboard. It wasn't maybe the perfect solution, the perfect technology to use for this, but it was a great way for the team to have fun learning how to do it. Because really the big thing to figure out when you're building plugins or widgets is like the messaging between the widget and the whatever your front end looks like. But more recently, at the beginning of, I guess during the Figma beta, I was on paternity leave, and this is Lena. She's 6 months old now, but yeah, basically the Figma people were really, the Figma team was really great, helping me work through my project and being understanding that I was also taking care of a child at the same time. So it was a nice evening project. The team was really great and very helpful. And then just jumping into like the early designs, I got some feedback like, you know, this is a 2x2, you should have quadrants. And then, so I made it into quadrants, and I realized that for this type of, this will make more sense once we're looking at the plugin, but we're probably wanting to actually end up towards one of the corners. So I changed the orientation of the grid a bit. Yeah, but it was super great. And like the community and the Figma team, where they were all very helpful. And then, and sort of like in simplifying the UI, the more recent versions are much cleaner than this and all that stuff. I'm going to quickly share just a few pieces of code and we can do a demo. So I've done a lot of React, but I never used Vite before. And the default sort of watch build UI script didn't have, it was in production mode. So I had to figure out, you have to need to add mode development. So that's if you're doing React with Vite, that's helpful because the default dev server doesn't spit out in a folder to where you can have it communicating back and forth with the widget. So that was key in terms of debugging my React errors. I also experienced the issue with needing to use synced map. Like, so all of this other stuff, like with the x-axis is, the y-axis, what the like set of ideas are, that should be the same across all users at all times. And so we could still use sync state for those, but the actual individual responses, people are sending those responses in at the same time. And so as we get a new response or like an additional response, we just target the specific response that was given and set the value. And there's one other piece of code here. Oh yeah, and like I said, another big thing for me and many people on my team is that I've used TypeScript a little bit, but not much. So this was it's nice that you can learn a little bit as you go along. So like my function here needed to have its props defined, but then later on, I think down here, yeah, you'll see a lot of red underlining just because I didn't really have to fix it. It was a lot of just make it work as quickly as possible programming going on here. So I think the next thing we'll do is just a quick demo. Jump back into Figma and over here. And if you all are also in this file, we'll just do this example here where, let me just go to 0. So basically you select some stickies and you click add selected stickies to prioritize. And these are the names for our cat. So we're gonna rate these on cuteness and memorability. Memorability, is that a word? I don't know. So we start voting. And so as they're clicking add your ratings, they're going to see this exact same thing. So reach each of the following ideas on memorability and cuteness. And you click let's go. And so the reason, so I guess you'll probably notice like this UI is a bit, there's more in the UI side on the UI in the HTML than there is on some of the others you see. But the key here was I wanted to give people feedback of what they were selecting. But I didn't want to reveal the answers immediately to everyone. And in those cases, I've just clicked randomly. Or you want to have people doing some sort of independent contributions to collaborations without seeing what everyone is doing. This can be a good way to do it. But still getting some feedback immediately if they're done. Okay, you hit all done, you hit reveal results. And then the different votes show up here. And so we click on Sir Whiskers and see how the individual participants have voted, or Garfield, and uncheck that. Yeah, and that was pretty much it. And so it's open source. It's if you go to the page on the Figma site, you'll see the link down there, and then that's over here. And yeah, thank you very much. I'm gonna quit clicking around and stop sharing my screen.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brett. I know you made that look simple, but I know there was a lot of considerations in that code. I also love the breakdown when you click into the view on each answer to know what the people are. It's also good to know that Sir Whiskers kind of wins it all, like I thought. So that's great. Our next developer up is Shoshi. Shoshi worked on the donut widget. So Shoshi, if you'd introduce yourself, and I can't wait to get into this with you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Raji. I'm excited to talk to all of you about the FigJam widget we built for Donut. So I'm Shoshi, I'm our engineering lead. And while I'm talking to you here today, I'd also like to acknowledge all of the work that our product designer, Juan, has put into the design side of this widget, as well as the entire team for testing, writing copy, and a bunch of other things. So what did we build? First, we thought about what was unique about FigJam and how we could expand on that, and also what people already are using FigJam for rapid prototyping, for brainstorming, and then how do we fit what Donut does in terms of bringing people together and creating connectedness into FigJam. So we got really excited about the idea of multiplayer and having people be able to collaborate in real time while they're meeting. Plus, we wanted to see what was possible with the FigJam components while staying within the widget, so that everyone was seeing the same thing at the same time. And just playing with this idea of how do you help people prepare for a brainstorm and get creatively warmed up. So once this GIF cycles back around, you'll see that what we built is sort of a widget box of a bunch of games and exercises to choose from. And so here we're going to choose Draw Some. And once we click into this game, you'll see there's a little bit of an overview here. And once we choose, you get to shuffle through some topics, things you might find in your home, in a school, and customize the timers for how long you want to brainstorm, how long everyone's going to take for each turn. And then once we've chosen this topic, we have a little bit of brainstorming time, and then everyone's going to start in round robin fashion, everyone taking a turn drawing, everyone else guessing what they're drawing, and going around in this round robin style. So a lot of the games fit into this format, and this one is based on drawing. So since using FigJam widgets is a fairly new interaction, we did a lot of testing starting really early on to see which interactions were most usable for folks, like what made sense, and most importantly, what was fun for folks. So we definitely followed the laughter in our testing sessions. Whenever folks were laughing, we knew we were on the right track and going in the right direction. So our team already has frequent brainstorming sessions as well as social gatherings. So we used a bunch of different iterations of this widget in those sessions, and that really helped us identify both confusion and fun at every stage. And also big thank you to the Figma team for doing a bunch of this testing with us as well. So yeah, testing early and often was a really useful recipe for us. Oops, skipped a slide. Back to that. So what about the development process? So the FigJam components that were built in gave us a lot of Lego-like elements to play with. And thanks to the other speakers today for going over a bunch of what those are. There were a few other helpful tips and tricks that we found along the way. So similar to CSS variables, we wanted to have a way to keep our styles consistent within the widget. So we created a bunch of different variables for colors, font sizes, font weights, etc. And these were helpful to either pass into props directly, or as you can see below with text gray props, we had some like groups of variables that were following each other around and repeated together across multiple props. So creating objects with groups of props, and big thanks to Michael Young for that object pattern. So another thing, once we'd done a bunch of testing and we were starting to settle on some common elements that we were reusing a lot, button happened to be one of them, but there were more than this one. We created some custom components so that we didn't have to keep repeating that code, especially since your code can get quite long with a bunch of auto layouts. So what we have here is a function that's going to render a button. It takes a few props for the text that's going to be in the button, what's going to happen on click, and a light property for should this be a light purple button or a dark purple button. So inside of this function that's outside of our main render function, we're returning all of the elements that we need to render this button. You can see we're passing in props.click to our onClick handler. Our fill is taking a ternary to determine which color it should be. And then we're passing in our text to the text component as well. And so back in our main render function, you can see this allows us to repeat our nice new little button component and pass in some different functions for what's going to happen on click. And then this is what it's going to end up looking like. So similarly, since we were doing very rapid prototyping, we tried to come up with a bunch of games and exercises that all had a similar shape and structure, and that helped keep the scope of the development contained. So all the exercises we created have 4 states, though one is optional, and they all have fairly similar attributes, name, description, some defaults for what the timers should start at, and if this particular game or exercise has prompts, passing in some prompts. We definitely had a lot of ideas that are not in this format, and they could be really fun to play with in the future, like asymmetrical gameplay, for example. But we found that working within the structure allowed us to rapidly try out a bunch of different games and exercises to give folks a lot of creative warm-up options. There we go. Sorry, it took a second to advance that slide. Thanks everyone for listening. And if folks have questions, feel free to ask in chat and I'll do my best to answer them.
Thanks so much, Shoshi. Such a fun widget. We have used it probably every week in our meetings. So thanks for bringing it to us and helping us not to have to research great questions to connect with our team. I love the drawing one because the drawings that come out are so silly. Okay, well, we're doing really good for time. And our next guest is the man that you see. This is Sawyer from our team. Now, Sawyer helped a lot of these developers onboard into widgets. And Sawyer's going to have a little session where he brings us through a development on a widget from 0 to 100. So let's go with it. Sawyer, if you'd introduce yourself and just get at it.
Yeah, my name is Sawyer. I'm a software engineer here at Figma. Yeah, I've had the pleasure of working on widgets for the past few months, and it's been incredible. So I'm actually, yeah, like Raji said, I'm just going to dive in and I'm going to program this widget from scratch. in front of all y'all. I'm assuming everyone can see my screen all right over here. Let me move out my, have to move out the Zoom window. We have, so one thing I've done with teams in the past is like, we'll kind of go around the room and ask people if they're feeling like green, yellow, red about something. Like, how do you feel about the launch date? Are you green, yellow, red about it? Green means good, yellow means on the fence, red means I don't feel good about the launch date. I thought this would be something that would be really fun to build as a widget. So I'm just gonna dive in and code this for you. So I actually have the widget set up over here. You can see that it's beautiful. It's just a black rectangle at this point. And we have the code set up for it over here. We just have an auto layout component as a black fill. And if we go over to this, the actual design over here, this traffic design, you can kind of see that we have like rounded corners over here. So I'm going to go ahead and just add that to my widget. I can do this. We have this JSX like syntax. It's like React. I can just add a corner radius on. Let's give it 12 pixels. And when I save it, you can see actually live reloads over here as I edit it. So I can get this really quick feedback loop as I sort of build things out. This looks all right. I think the next thing I want to do is I want to add these circles over here. We have like the green, yellow, red circles. I'm going to use auto layout for these as well, because we have the vote counter for how many people voted for that thing on the inside. So what I'm going to do is let's add another auto layout. And what I will do, I'm going to go in, let's give this a fill of, let's make it green, which I believe is, I think that's the right color. It is. You can see that it's filling up this entire thing. Let's give this a corner radius so it looks more like a circle. You know, a big corner radius. Okay, we have a circle. We're looking good. The next thing though is you'll see that it's really kind of packed in there. I think we want a little bit more spacing around it. On this black frame on the outside, let's give it a bit of padding. Give this 12 pixels of padding. Looks good. Sweet. It's slowly coming together. The next thing that I would like to do is let's go in. Let's repeat this a bit so we can get all these other circles in. And next we have yellow. And then we have red. Incredible. You can see though, we're kind of going horizontally, which isn't necessarily what we want. We want it to be vertical. On this root auto layout up here, I can actually set the direction that it goes in, which is if you use Flexbox, it's very similar to that. Or if you've used auto layout in Figma, it's incredibly similar to that. I'll set the direction to be vertical. And look at that, it magically flips before my eyes. And then the final thing I want to do is I want to give a little bit of spacing in here. And I can just let's add 12 pixels of spacing as well. So we get that spacing in between all the elements, which is great. Next, let's kind of continue mocking out the UI. The other thing that we're kind of missing here is this vote counter inside. I showed the auto layout component. We also support almost any layer that you can add inside of Figma. So I'm gonna paste some text in here, and I actually have the styles for this text already filled out, so we don't have to watch me manually fill it out. I'm just going to paste this in. Oh, that's not what I want. Is this what I want? I think this is what I want. And we can see we have text. You can see I broke the widget. That's all right. Let's close the text. We shouldn't be rendering text yet. And I think we need to re-render widget. I might have broken it. Hold on. How did I break it today? I think the text I copied was wrong. All right. I'm just going to manually fill it out. It's going to have a white fill. Add a stroke in here. Font size is going to be 32. Let's add a stroke width of maybe 2. And now let's see what that looks like. You can see that we didn't actually set the size of our auto layout here. So we need to make that maybe bigger so we can actually see the text inside. Let's make that 100 by 100. And now you can see that we aren't necessarily centered, which would be good. So we can add some logic to center that text inside of this auto layout. We set the vertical align items to be centered. and the horizontal align items to also be center. Ta-da! And that's starting to look a lot more like our design. Getting close. And now you can see I only did this for the green circle. It would be nice if I didn't have to sort of repeat this for these other circles. And like some of our other speakers showed, you can actually create custom components. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Let's just call this a light. And I'm just going to kind of cut this whole part out of here. And let's make our new light component return it. And I can save this. You'll see that our green light disappears. But that's okay, because I can go down here and I can just use my custom component like I would use any of the built-in ones. And now when I save, you can see I can just put it right here. And now let's go ahead and maybe let's replace all of these with our lights. And you'll see that they're all green now. We kind of want to be able to customize these a bit. So we can make this light take in props. And if you've written a React component before, it's super similar to that. I can kind of define a custom interface that I would like to accept. In this case, I'm going to make it take a color, and that can be red, yellow, or green. And I can just read these, take these props as a function in here. Incredible. And now we actually aren't reading from them. We'll get a TypeScript error down here saying that we don't have the color. So let's go ahead and let's add the color in. So this one's gonna be red, or it's actually being green. Incredible. And when we save, you'll see I'm not actually reading my color yet. So let's go ahead and update this to do that. And I gave it these really friendly color names. I'm going to paste in a little mapping that maps from the friendly color names that I made up to the hex codes. And let's just grab the hex code really quick. And let's use the hex code in here. And now when I save, you can see that we're actually reusing the component, and we have our green, yellow, red, and we're using the properties that we passed in. So we're getting really close. It looks like the design is mostly done. It's matching up. You'll see we're not actually reading any data, which is kind of useful. And this isn't interactive at all. If I click on this, nothing happens. So let's make that happen. Any of our built-in components, they can take an on-click function. And what I can do is now when I click on one of these components, that's just to prove that it works. Let's make this log the color of that light. And now if I go over here, you'll see that I actually get my cursor changes to a pointer saying that I can click on it. If I click on this, you'll see on my console, it actually says yellow. Sorry, this is not big enough. But the console says yellow, it says red, it says green. So we can actually log depending on what we click on, which is really neat. That's useful, but now maybe we should make it maybe record a vote that we would like, what color you voted for. We can do this as well. I think some of our earlier speakers, they showed about use synced map. I'm going to use that here. I'm going to create a vote map. So a map of votes, and we'll use our use sync map function. And how I'm thinking about this is we're going to vote from a session ID of a user. We're going to map this to the color they voted for. And by doing this, this actually has a really nice property where basically if someone votes multiple times, like so if they vote on green and they vote on yellow, their session ID will actually overwrite the last one. So they can effectively only vote for one color at a time, which is like a nice side effect of using a map in this case. Nice. Sweet. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make when someone clicks on one of these circles, one of these lights, it's going to record their vote. So what I'm going to do is let's make this do vote map.set. I'm going to set the key as the user's current user's session ID. And the value that's going to be in there is the color that they voted for. Very nice. One thing, so this is a new API that we added to the plugin API and the widget API when we launched widgets. It basically lets you get information about the current user who's interacting with it. To use this, you need to add this current user permission into your manifest.json. But after that, you should be good to go to use this. So we're recording our vote, but we actually aren't showing the data. We have 12 hard-coded in here. Let's maybe count the votes for the certain like. What we can do is we can say vote map dot values. This will get all the values that were voted for. So it'll be like red, green, yellow, etc. And let's filter these by the color of the current light that we're rendering. So let's say we only want to get the votes where the vote is equal to color. And let's get the count of how many there are here. And now when I save this, they should all be 0. You'll see, because I haven't voted for anything yet, I haven't clicked on it. But now, if I click on one of these, you'll see that the green one now has 1 vote. It shows up as we voted. One person has voted for green, one person has voted for yellow, one has voted for red. And the other cool thing, hold on, I have another window somewhere. I think it's right over here. The suspense. Where is it? There it is. I'm zooming in on my other window, and you can see its cursor over here. I can vote as well on this other window, and it is also independently counted. So yeah, we built a very, very simple widget in a very small amount of time, a little over 10 minutes, is more like 12. But yeah, that is what I have for y'all. Yeah, thank you so much. And I think we're going to kick it off to Q&A now. So I think maybe Raji will take it back up on, maybe.
That's absolutely right. So we're going to go ahead and just do some open Q&A. I know that we had Q&A that came through that we answered in the chat, but I'd absolutely love for anyone to just pop it in the chat now if you'd like, or via the Q&A button. And we have all these great minds here that can answer some questions, especially if you have any blockers. So please hit us up. Let's hear those questions. I know that maybe there's something that I know that Gavin answered this one, but maybe one that we could just speak to everyone. And it was a question, I believe, from Eli, and it was about inlining the state of the plugin window and sending that through sort of like string interpolation. And what's really the best way that we all think about like sending data back and forth, because inlining the whole HTML in a string to a show UI seems to be a little bit cumbersome and maybe a little bit feels a little bit naughty. So anybody have any like ideas on how you've done that? Any code to share?
I found a big success in just using frameworks. It's just way easier than writing the HTML out and then as like a string that you can put in variables to, which is just a little complicated. So yeah, the examples that I think were posted, I can post it again in this chat using Vite to do the build process were like really easy, because then what you could do is you just send the messages back and forth using post message. And then on the React side or whatever framework side, you can get that via some sort of effect or however that framework does it, get that data immediately when the iframe is kind of initialized. And so that was a really easy way for me to grab like state and set values immediately. Since my form, I did have an edit for the soundboard. I did have to show that data like from the widget again, like the state that the widget held back to the form. So that's how I handled that. I hopefully that answers the question, but I just happened to think like using like a framework was just the easier way. But yeah.
And Tru, did you have, I know we shared a lot of your GitHub repos.
Yeah.
Did you, do you have examples in those repos of this kind of behavior?
Yes, of course. Yeah. So
Perfect.
I posted a link basically. I demoed the hook, the use data from widget hook. That is like the way that I grabbed in the immediate data, like as soon as the iframe is initialized. So that's how when you click on edit, it shows the previous values that you entered, like the URL and the name of the sound, etc. So I can post a link to that exact line of code in the open source right there. So that's just a good example. This is also set up using Vite and React. So if anyone's interested, just feel free to take this, clone it, and just scrape out all the code. Start from like a very basic widget, React widget. But yes, that's.
That's so perfect. Thank you. Also,
course.
just to all of our speakers, I just want to say a heartfelt thank you for the time you put into this. I know you've already put in so much time just into developing these, but then taking additional time to share with everyone today. And all of you open sourcing has been like amazing. I think it's going to be such a great level up for people that are just starting.